It's January 11th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the UN Security Council meeting on Russia. Members of the UN Security Council called out Russia for procuring North Korean missiles and launching them against Ukraine. Russia defended itself, saying the claim is false and that the U.S. is spreading unverified information. The U.S. and the U.K. are weighing a response to Iranian-backed Houthis' attacks against commercial ships in the Red Sea after their warship intercepted one of the largest barrages of drones and missiles yet from Yemen. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned of consequences for continued attacks by the Houthis. After a false start on Tuesday, the Securities and Exchange Commission gave approval the next day for all 11 applications from spot Bitcoin ETF issuers. Those 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs will be available to investors starting Thursday. South Korea and the U.S. leveled serious allegations against Russia for its apparent use of North Korean weapons against Ukraine. Now, Moscow was busy defending itself at Wednesday's UN Security Council meeting, insisting it's all false information. Our Shin Se-byuk has our top story.
The U.S. during a UN Security Council meeting on Wednesday condemned the weapons trade between North Korea and Russia, saying their, quote, abhorrent moves are targeting Ukrainians.
It's abhorrent that a permanent member of the UN Security Council is flagrantly violating Council resolutions to attack another UN member state.
The deputy U.S. ambassador also said that Russia is expected to use more missiles to destroy critical infrastructure and kill people in Ukraine. Russia, however, denied all allegations, saying the U.S. is spreading false information.
The U.S. seems to be spreading information that is wrong without going through the trouble of checking this beforehand.
South Korea also accused North Korea of using Ukraine as a test site for its nuclear-capable weapons, and added insights gained could lead to further arms exports by Pyongyang.
It can be further encouraged to export ballistic missiles to other countries and rake in new revenue to further finance its illegal nuclear and ballistic missile programs.
Hwang's remarks followed recent revelations by the White House, which said North Korea had provided Russia with dozens of ballistic missiles, some of them used during strikes on December 30th and on January 2nd and 6th. Prior to Wednesday's meeting, 8 countries, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, issued a joint statement condemning Russia's use of weapons sourced from the North in violation of UNSC resolutions. The statement said violations from Pyongyang and Moscow not only lead to the suffering of the Ukrainian people, but also undermine global non-proliferation. Meanwhile, the NATO-Ukraine Council held a video conference on Wednesday, following a slew of Russian airstrikes against Ukraine. During the meeting, NATO allies strongly condemned Russia's escalation in terms of airstrikes, as well as Moscow's use of weapons sourced from North Korea and Iran. They also pledged to provide Ukraine with major military, economic, and humanitarian aid, stating that their 2024 plans are worth, quote, billions of euros. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Washington says there has not been any indication of military cooperation between North Korea and Hamas, which contrasts Seoul's assessment that North Korea-made weapons are being used by the militant group. According to a National Security Council coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, on Wednesday, there is nothing to suggest some sort of a cooperation militarily between Hamas and North Korea. And the comments come after Seoul's National Intelligence Service confirmed a Voice of America report last week that Hamas fighters have used an F-7 rocket-propelled grenade launcher made by the North. Kirby also commented on military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, saying Washington is watching very closely. The U.S. and the U.K. are ready to hit back against Yemen's Houthi rebels after their militaries foiled the group's largest attack yet on the Red Sea. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned Houthis will be held responsible for the continued attacks. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Both the United States and the United Kingdom said Wednesday that they could take military action against Yemen's Houthi rebels after they repelled the group's largest attack yet on the Red Sea. Responding to the attacks, carrier-based jets and warships on Tuesday night shot down 21 drones and missiles launched by Houthis. The Houthis say they targeted a U.S. ship that they said was providing support to Israel, as they repeatedly claimed that any merchant vessels linked to Israel would be attacked in protest against Israeli offensives in Gaza. The latest Houthi attack was the 26th such attack on commercial shipping in the Red Sea since November 19th. During his trip to the Middle East, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Wednesday that there will be consequences for continued Houthi attacks in the Red Sea.
Again, all I can tell you is that, as we've made clear, and many other countries made clear, there'll be consequences for the Houthis' actions. We've also repeatedly tried to make clear to Iran, as other countries have as well, that the support that they're providing to the Houthis, including for these actions, needs to stop.
Meanwhile, Blinken on Wednesday met Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in the Israeli-occupied West Bank following meetings with Israeli leaders. During the meeting, the two discussed post-war plans for Gaza, including steps towards the establishment of a Palestinian state. The U.S. envoy also discussed efforts to minimize civilian harm in the Gaza Strip and increase the delivery of aid inside the war-torn region, expressing support for a Palestinian state and encouraging administrative reforms of the PA. President Abbas told Blinken that no Palestinians should be displaced from Gaza or the West Bank. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Hamas has issued a warning that they cannot guarantee the safety of the hostages if Israel does not agree to a comprehensive ceasefire. That's according to the Times of Israel, citing a spokesperson for Hamas on Wednesday. As the tensions rise on the Israel and Lebanon border, Israel's chief of staff in an address to his troops said, "There is no village or fortress in Lebanon that we cannot dismantle." Meanwhile, Gaza's health ministry said that since the outbreak of the war on October 7th last year, over 23,000 people have been killed in the Gaza Strip. That's 1% of its entire population. New personnel were appointed on Wednesday as part of efforts to bolster the Yoon administration's economic security policies, with the country looking to expand trade and diplomatic connections. Our Oh Soo-young has more on the reshuffle.
South Korea's top office named a new official in charge of economic security, and a new trade minister as Seoul this year aims to ramp up its economic diplomacy. The presidential office on Wednesday announced the Yoon administration's latest reshuffle of key government positions, beginning with the National Security Council. Incumbent Economic Security Secretary Won Yoon-jong was appointed to take the newly established position of the third Deputy National Security Advisor, given his diverse experience in academia, economic research and the business community, handling trade relations with the US and China. His position will be filled by An Tae-yeon, Professor of International Relations at the University of Seoul, known as an expert in global affairs and energy security. This comes after a series of new appointments made across the foreign affairs and trade ministries as key figures in the administration gear up to run for the April parliamentary elections. With a stronger focus on economic security, the administration has realigned its personnel to address new emerging challenges that affect the export-dependent country. It has cited supply chain disruptions and fierce global competition to master core technologies that ultimately determine both economic and military prowess. On that note, the president approved former ambassador to the United Nations Cho Tae-yeol as the new foreign minister, a day after Parliament adopted a confirmation report, a process required for ministerial positions. Yoon's office named former journalist and current Overseas Public Relations Secretary Kang In-sun as the second Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, recognising her familiarity with geopolitical affairs and public diplomacy. 3 other vice ministerial positions were also announced, including logistics and trade expert Chung In-kyo as the new trade minister to lead negotiations and resolve sticking points in trade, replacing An Deok-gun, who was recently promoted to Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy. Incumbent Second Vice Minister Kang Kyung-sung, currently in charge of industrial policy, took the first Vice Minister position, with Ministry spokesperson Chen Amo as his replacement. The top office on Wednesday also nominated Yoo Cheol-an, a former judge at the Seoul Central District Court, to lead the country's anti-corruption agency, which is a ministerial position requiring the National Assembly's approval. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea will be holding its first policy rate meeting of the year in the coming hour. It looks like the 3.5% rate is set to remain unchanged for the 8th time straight. Joining us to discuss is Professor Ho Jun-young. Welcome back.
Hello.
Good morning. The country's central bank is expected to leave the policy rate unchanged in the upcoming meeting, right?
Yeah, I do agree. In the sense that their primary mandate is price stability, but the inflation in Korea, December 2023, is still 3.2%, which is way higher than the Bank of Korea target. So there's kind of very low probability of late cut, in the sense that the prices, the inflation is still high. But at the same time, the Korean economy is kind of big in the sense that recently, there's kind of project financing issue in the real estate sector. So, another rate hike will be pretty dangerous to the Korean, economy, in the sense that, there's kind of weak sector in the economy. So, not rate cut, not rate hike. So maybe they maintain the rate at 3.5%.
I see. What we also do know for now is that the U.S. Fed officials they all agree that interest rate cuts are likely this year. How closely will the Bank of Korea be watching the moves by the Fed then?
It is I think at least, the probability is pretty low in the sense that, the Bank of Korea will move before the Fed rate cut. I think that probability is pretty low because of the financial market, international financial market, because of the exchange rate kind of issue. Maybe the Bank of Korea has not much room for moving before the Fed rate cut. So I think the Bank of Korea will be patient, keep watching what Fed is doing. And then if Fed is starting, their rate cut, then the Bank of Korea will follow. That's what I believe.
Right. That means South Korea is not in a hurry to cut rates anytime soon, right?
Right. So I think the 3.5% interest rate will be we'll see that interest rate for a while, I think, until the end of the second quarter. So in my scenario, I think, market first. Market expect that the Fed rate cut, the first rate cut will occur in March, but I think that's too much. That's too early. I think given the U.S. labor market situation still pretty solid, and so I expect that the first rate cut from the Federal Reserve will be as early as possible this June. And then the Bank of Korea, after the Fed, lowering their interest rate, the Bank of Korea will follow. I think the earliest possible date will be, the early third quarter, July or August, I think.
Professor Ho, but some experts are saying that the rate cuts in South Korea could come as early as in the second quarter. Why do you think they believe that it could come as early as second quarter then?
If the Federal Reserve move in the first quarter, for example, as market expected, the Federal Reserve, first rate cut, if that happens in March or sometime in May, then the Bank of Korea can move in the second quarter. But I think my scenario, given the U.S. economic situation, macroeconomic situation, the Fed first rate cut will be, as early as possible in June, and then the Bank of Korea will follow. Then the Bank of Korea's first rate cut will be happening in the third quarter. So that's my scenario.
Before I let you go, Professor Ho, South Korea is going to pour all of its efforts to make sure its economy is export-driven in 2024. But there's a lingering concern over poor domestic consumption, right? Will that get in the way of a possible rate hike? What do you think?
Sure. The interest rate is pretty high in Korea. 3.5% interest rate is pretty high. At the same time, there's a kind of accumulated effect of price rise in Korea. The CPI inflation was pretty high for a while, so there's like cumulated effect of it. So, I mean, there's like not much room for the consumers in Korea like open their wallet in this day. So, given this situation, another rate hike in Korea will be pretty, dangerous to the Korean economy, not just the like industrial sector. At the same time, it will hit the Korean consumers. Situation. So I think another rate hike in Korea from the Bank of Korea will be like very less likely. So.
All right, Professor Ha, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has approved Bitcoin exchange traded funds in the U.S. The decision means that approval was given for 11 applications wishing to create investment funds that track the value of Bitcoin. SEC Chair Gary Gensler called the decision a watershed moment for crypto and significant for the integration of cryptocurrency into mainstream finance. The decision is likely to lead to the conversion of Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which currently holds approximately $29 billion worth of Bitcoin, into an ETF. Now, the first funds are set to begin trading on Thursday. House prices and aging planned cities have long been a headache for people here in South Korea. But in the new year, President Yoon says old regulations will be removed and instead redevelopment will come sooner and more easily. Our Kim Do-yeon has this report.
Homes that citizens want. That was the second topic of the government's open debate on Wednesday with citizens and government officials. New year, new format, with the debate replacing the conventional briefings to the president by each ministry in January. There, President Yoon Suk-yeol promised that aging planned cities like Ilsan, Gyeonggi-do province, where the discussion was held, will be redeveloped before the end of his term.
우선 우리 정부는 재개발, 재건축에 관한 규제를 아주 확 풀어버리겠습니다. 30년 이상 노후화된 주택은 안전진단 없이 바로 재건축에 착수할 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
This is because for an apartment to be reconstructed, it needs to fail a safety inspection. And as residents of old homes want them to be rebuilt, they want to fail. Other policies included expanding the floor ratio up to 500% and creating what's called Future City Fund for financing. He also addressed issues with multi-home ownership. Under the previous government, people with multiple homes were taxed heavily. The aim of this policy was to bring prices back down as South Korea's home prices skyrocketed in the early 2020s. President Yoon said such punitive taxing only shifted the burden to the tenants.
결국 그 피해를 서민들이 다 입게 됐습니다. 저희들은 이런 중과세를 철폐해서 서민들이 또 임차인들이 혜택을 입을 수 있도록 만들겠습니다.
He also underscored the importance of leaving politics and ideology out of the market. And when something is needed by the government, such as financing and relocation plans, that's when it acts. At the discussion were around 50 ordinary citizens, such as residents of homes that are in need of reconstruction, newlyweds, and young people looking to buy their first home, to share their views on housing. In the meantime, he also took time to visit a 33-year-old apartment block in Ilsan. According to the top office, the apartment complex wasn't able to be rebuilt despite its nearly crumbling state due to current regulations. While looking around to check for what's needed when the redevelopment kicks off, President Yoon promised the residents there that a speedy process is on its way. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Ji-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Ecuador, where a 60-day state of emergency is in place, with updates on the chaotic outbreak of violence there. President Daniel Noboa said Wednesday that his country is in a state of war against terrorism and vowed to continue the fight. Schools across the country were closed on Wednesday, along with many businesses. Ecuadorian police said the same day that 70 people had been arrested since Monday in incidents including the takeover of a TV station. Authorities also said that more than 100 guards and staff were still being held hostage by prisoners, with violence reported in at least 6 prisons following the escape of Adolfo Macias, the leader of the Los Choneros gang, on Sunday. 2 police officers were killed in Guayas province on Tuesday, with explosions reported in several cities. Out of 7 other police officers kidnapped around the country, 3 have been freed. President Noboa says the violence is a reaction to government plans to build a new high-security prison for gang leaders. We move over to Taiwan, which holds its presidential election on Saturday. Taiwan's foreign minister has said Beijing is trying to influence the election. Foreign Minister Joseph Wu said on Tuesday that China has operated interference efforts in every election since Taiwan was democratized, and that China's global objective is that they want to use Taiwan as a test ground. If they are able to successfully shape the results of Taiwan elections, they will try to apply their tactics on other countries. China has imposed import restrictions on Taiwan and invited local politicians on all expenses paid visits to China aimed at increasing support for pro-China candidates. Under Taiwan's anti-infiltration laws, its authorities are prosecuting almost 200 Taiwanese local leaders who were invited on the trip. Beijing wants Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party ousted by the opposition Kuomintang, and has said that this Saturday's election is a choice between war and peace. Online retail giant Amazon said on Wednesday that it will lay off several hundred employees from its subsidiaries Twitch and Prime Video. The company's internal note, seen by media outlets, said Amazon has identified opportunities to reduce or discontinue investments in certain areas. Live streaming company Twitch disclosed that it will lay off some 500 employees, which is about 35% of its workforce. This follows last year's wave of US tech layoffs, where more than 27,000 jobs were cut by Amazon, alongside Microsoft and Facebook's layoffs of 10,000 employees each, and Google's 12,000 layoffs. Nepalese spiritual leader Ram Bahadur Bamjan, known as Buddha Boy, was arrested late Tuesday local time in Kathmandu on charges of sexual assault of a minor and kidnapping. Police said Wednesday that Bamjan attempted to flee the authorities by jumping from a second-floor window, but was taken into custody. Officials also confirmed that they seized some $250,000 worth of Nepalese and foreign currency from his house during the arrest. 33-year-old Bamjan became famous in Nepal, as many believe him to be the reincarnation of Siddhartha Gautama, or Buddha, born in southwestern Nepal 2,600 years ago.
Good morning. Western parts of Korea will be choking on high levels of ultrafine dust today, with a dust advisory issued in Incheon, Daejeon, Sejong, and Chungcheong, Namdo province this morning. A high-quality face mask is a must to protect yourself from this dust storm. Meanwhile, west of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces will see dust levels rising as the day goes on today. We are getting into mid-January, but it will not feel much like it though. Dust mixed with haze is lowering visibility this morning, and lingering haze and dust will blur the skyline. Daily highs will be slightly higher than yesterday's, Seoul topping out at 5 degrees, Daegu at 8 degrees Celsius. But more dust will blow in tonight. Temperatures will stay higher than norms, and so will dust levels for the next few days. There could be light snow in mountainous regions late tonight, with another round of wintry precipitation in the forecast for Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.